So, hello everyone, and welcome to 15 Below webinar on the new normal. I think everyone's already sick of that phrase, but that's what we're going to be talking about today is how can travel companies prepare for when things pick back up and we start flying again. What is that new normal going to look like, as we go forward, and what communications and how the customer experience need to be looked after in that situation. So my name's Al Tredinick, and I'm head of business development at 15 Below. And I am joined today by my colleague Alex Thornton, who's the head of account management for the Asia Pacific region. Morning, Alex. Afternoon, evening.
Hi. Hi. Good morning.
So, just to give you a bit of background about 15 Below, so that you know sort of why we're talking about this and where our opinion comes from. We have specialised in one thing for the last 20 years, and that is helping airlines communicate with their passengers. We mostly work with airlines. We do work with some big TMCs as well, some rail. But really our speciality has been helping airlines communicate with all of their passengers for various reasons. That could be anything from a booking confirmation, a pre-trip advisory notification, check-in and boarding passes, and then we do a lot of work in disruption, arguably handling disrupted passenger workflows and two-way communication has been our core speciality over the last 20 years, which is why we think that we probably have a quite helpful and unique perspective through this because it's all we normally do. We work with about 55 of the world's airlines. On a normal year, we look after about 1 billion passengers. And on an average day, that can be around 2 million notifications. Although as the crisis kicked off back in March, it was probably 10 times that day easily, as our airlines used our system to automatically send out all the cancellations and rebookings and vouchers and all that kind of thing. So we really do feel like we've sat at the heart of disruption over the last 20 years. You know, we handled the ash cloud with our customers, 9/11, all of those different things. So we're seeing a lot of those trends play out, although obviously everything is different for COVID. The way we do all of that is by integrating with all the major reservation systems, plus all the other sort of third-party systems like CRMs, data warehouses, loyalty programs, third-party providers for different feeds, that kind of thing. We do it all over the world, and one of our unique capabilities is to handle multi-channel workflows. So we will be able to communicate across any channel, but often multiple channels in the same workflow. So because a lot of our messages are super important and super critical, like a customer's been rebooked onto a different flight, our system will automatically sort of switch between different channels until it gets hold of the customer and gets their response. So that's enough of the sales plug, but I just wanted to explain that because I thought it's good for you to understand where we're coming from. There's been a lot of webinars about COVID, and where we're focused is very much on how you need to communicate to your customers and things to consider in that process. You'll see on the screen a list of our customers. As you can see, they range in size, location, style of airline, that kind of thing. And I really would urge, if anyone has any questions all the way through this, please post them in the question function. We'd be happy to answer those as we go through. If you need any help going forward, whether you're a customer or you're not a customer, and you need some help and advice on any of the things we bring up today or anything else to do with COVID, please do let us know. So, on to our first question, and I'm going to throw this to you, Alex. What do we need to change, you think, as an industry, as a priority as we go forward?
Thank you, Al. I think communication is always key to making customers reduce their anxiety and fear. We do live in a state of fear at the moment because we do not know what this thing is doing. We do not know how it's evolving. We don't know many things about it. So there is a certain anxiety out there where as consumers and as owners of companies are trying to figure out what we need to do. It is very good to see during the last 2 weeks industry coming together and organizations like IATA, ENSA, ICAO, and various other bodies coming together to discuss what the new norm will be. And out of this, it is very important for all of the companies involved, whether you're a travel agent or an airline or a bus company, to do regular communications, updates, which are going to give all of your customers that better information, because we are constantly bombarded by many different news, many different channels out there. So it's very important for you to communicate and own that communication to your customers, and also communicate to the customer with the channels that they are listening through. So I will definitely be encouraging all of you to differentiate yourselves through communication. And we know that we have been as an industry slow to catch up with other types of businesses out there. So it is very important to take examples from other parts of of other companies out there, where they are differentiating themselves in the sense of communications and expectations for the customer. We do have to deal with a lot of legacy systems. We know, for example, right now our revenue management systems are obsolete because we do not have forward bookings. We do not know what those bookings are going to be looking like in the future. So it's very important for you to think innovatively in the sense of, what is this pricing going to be moving forward? So we need to think in terms of crisis pricing to get customers onboarding themselves with future bookings, for example. And what about those existing bookings that we have? How can we be more and finding innovative ways to keep revenue flowing and keep revenue in our coffers? So, for example, what is what can we do in terms of refunds to the customer and encourage them not to take a refund, but take a future credit with something else? So can we give them a future credit with some miles, for example? How can we find ways to keep the customer engaged from a revenue perspective? And what do we do with booking and booking flexibility? Why don't we want to encourage them to book flights moving forward, irrespective of anxiety, by assuring them that they can rebook with no extra fees, for example, and to get them to start thinking during this future.
Yeah, I do think that's going to be quite critical. I mean, as you said, other industries handle this really well. And we know it's different. It's not the same industry, but I had an example of this last week where I ordered a gadget for my kitchen from Amazon. It arrived the next day and it wasn't working. So I got in touch with them. It was all automated. I self-served. It said, fine, send it back. Here's a barcode to give to your courier, so they know who to bring it back to. I stuck it back together, gave it the courier, they scanned it, it went back, and then a new one arrived the next day. Now, I know that isn't comparable logistically to an aircraft or a seat on that aircraft, but that is what consumers are going to expect. And one of the things I thought about there, where it does compare to a flight, is that my annoyance at being sent a product that didn't work was completely compensated for by how easy it was to correct that problem. And I think, as you were saying, getting people to book further in advance is going to become a thing. But I think everyone is going to have to accept that maybe that is, that's their plan A, but they might need to fall back on plan B or C as the situation changes. But it just means that mechanism for telling the customers that they've been rebooked and to allow them to take a credit or take another, to get moved a bit further into the future needs to be seamless, and it needs to be sort of really easy to use from a consumer point of view. I mean, the way I see it is that at the moment when a customer gets rebooked, when a passenger gets rebooked onto a new flight, we detect it automatically. We tell the customer and they can accept or decline it. I think what's going to happen is that can happen to the same customer multiple times now over a period of weeks or months as they run up to it. And as situations change. And that obviously is going to be annoying, but the customer doesn't want to go somewhere they're going to get stuck either. So, presumably, as long as that process is nice and slick, it should be, it should be okay. I want the airline to tell me that, do you know what, maybe you shouldn't go when you had plans. We've booked you a month out. Do you still want that? That kind of thing, because everyone's going to have to be a bit more flexible these days. But if any of those systems are painful, then they're not going to be flexible about it. So, wouldn't you agree?
That's right. That's right. And I think there is a certain frustration out there. And from a personal experience, I have booked a few flights within Europe for next month, for example, but I still cannot apply for a credit voucher. I have to wait until the airline cancels that flight or reschedules it in order for me to take the options. So this is where allowing the customer to have more available options to them when they want to do it is much more flexible and much more future-proof, if you like, because if I have to wait now until the airline decides whether they're going to open that country or not, it creates more anxiety for me because I've got those flights. I must not forget it to do it at the right time, and then apply for a credit voucher or apply for a refund when they actually give me that opportunity. So those options should be available now, and they should be encouraging to be a future travel voucher, for example, or credit. And for me to organize myself, because schedules do not come into line exactly at the same time for next year. So I cannot rebook for next year yet. So this is where it is a good opportunity to keep the revenue and give those options to customers to say, you can rebook at any given time. And here's, we're holding that voucher there for you, and come back to us whenever you want, and we'll give you a little bit extra miles or whatever, for your ancillaries, so you can enjoy your travel when all of this is over.
Yeah, it's really interesting it's the subtlety of the approach. I mean, I think that we've always said to airlines that we think best practice is solve a problem before the customer realizes they've had one. Tell them what that solution you provided is, and then they can negotiate that solution. But I've seen that across the different airlines. That we had some flights booked out to Singapore for a trade show, which got cancelled, obviously. But the airline we were flying with, not a customer, I'd like to point out, I won't name it, but what they should have done was said, we have given you a travel credit. Here is your money. If you do not want this, then, you can contact us. What they actually said is a travel credit could be made available to you. Please contact us. But that involved, hours and hours of sitting on a call, a lot of uncertainty because we didn't know. And I think I'd much rather than said, your money is safe. You don't need to worry about that. It's unconditionally safe. And then we can take our time dealing with this process. And it's ultimately, I think that's what they meant, but that's not how they said it. And that makes, that would have caused thousands and thousands and thousands of people to be sat in call queues at call centres. But it would have been a much easier thing to say, don't worry, your money is absolutely safe. This is what we have done already. If you don't like what we've done, then we can have a chat rather than we might do things and that kind of thing. I know how frustrating it is when the government says things like that. It would be much better to commit to something and then change it later than it is to sort of leave it all hanging, because that just involves a lot of manual.
Exactly. And automation answer, of course. So where we see customers, especially who have introduced automation, a lot of their work is much easier, and they still use the systems from a proactive perspective as well. So it's not always a certain process that they use. They can still use proactive notifications to allow those customers who are out there to self-serve, for example. So it's very important for airlines and travel agents to allow customers to manage their booking as much as possible. This is, as I mentioned earlier, this is like a reset button. So what is important moving forward, and what do we need to do to enable our customers to be able to self-serve rather than hang on the phone for hours to get through to someone, which creates huge frustration. So these are the things where certain changes should be prioritized and given a better overview in order to move forward, because there's going to be continuous disruption. We know this, it's not going to stop overnight. We are still going to have massive schedule changes coming through, massive changes to policies, procedures, as everything evolves until we find, that better norm for everyone. And as I mentioned, we're just starting to talk as an industry body, as together and collaborate and harmonize towards something. So, today I saw other news saying, we're going to have health certificates. Well, what are those health certificates going to say? And we do know that COVID has not been identified as once you had it, you're definitely immune. We do not know this yet. So what are those health certificates going to say? That I've had COVID, therefore I'm not going to have it again. But what about strains? What about all these things that are going to come through? So,
going to create a lot of changes, isn't it?
Yes, as much as those initiatives are good, and they're coming through with, all we're going to do is so we can open up our country, it doesn't mean that they are the right ones. So we need to be careful how, as an industry, we talk about these things and we implement those things, because otherwise there's a danger that, one country will do something and trip everyone over, like we've seen it before. Okay. So I guess there's always a cost to this, right? So what is the cost of getting it wrong?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Just to Alex's point a moment ago, automation is really critical. Solving the how of how you handle all of these things is really important. As Alex said in the previous slide, actually, there are a lot of airlines out there who are taking the initiative here while they're shut down, and they're putting a lot of processes in place so that, they don't know what they're going to have to communicate to customers, don't know how much rebooking they're going to have to do, how many messages they're going to have to send. But what they're doing is working on the mechanics of that to make sure that when they do know, it is very easy to do and it's mostly automated. So that when a customer gets rebooked, all they've got to do is make a decision about the scheduling. The rest of it's handled and automated. It's really important. Like, now is a really good time to fix it. I actually think, I can't name any names at the moment, but there are a few airlines out there who are going to come out at the front of the pack at the end of this, because they've used this downtime to catch up and actually to probably surpass some airlines. So I think it is going to change the market quite a lot. We've seen some airlines of all sizes actually who have said, right, do you know what, when this all lifts, I want to be better at everyone else at it. How can we do that? Which has been, I think, is going to be quite interesting. I do think the landscape's going to change. As obviously, to do that kind of project obviously does take a certain amount of money. So we spend a lot of time talking to airlines about the business case for all of this kind of thing. The maths aren't massively complicated, and we've tried to be very conservative with what we're going to show you today. But if you imagine an airline of about 10 million passengers a year, what you're looking at on the screen is very, very basic math that works out that every time you try and handle something like disruption, via call centers or by manual handling, the cost is enormous. So whatever you spend to solve this problem isn't going to come anywhere near that type of bill. So I know a lot of you out there are thinking, God, I'd love to sort all this out and get better at it, but I can't get the budget agreed. In reality, that money is already getting spent, and it takes, a project can take a few weeks to a few months to reduce that figure down by 80% easily. So the business case isn't too complicated. If we just go on to the next slide, we see how we broke this down. So like I said, we've tried to be very conservative here to work it out, but we're going to have to call out. When it comes to something where you've got to get a simple answer out of the customer, like I said, you've solved that problem. You've said to them, are you aware of this? Are you okay with this? Have you done this thing? We can get them to click on something and respond and say, yes, they have, and record that in the booking. Now, most of the time we found, as long as there's a lot of detail in the business engine that handles it, so it treats each customer differently and not everyone on the same plane like they're the same person, you can actually automate a good 80% of things like schedule changes or acknowledgements and that kind of thing. Whenever anyone has to talk to a customer and the customer just says, yeah, fine, whatever, I get it, I understand, I accept, whatever, that is the worst thing you can ever get a person to do, because that could have been automated. Even when it's a slightly more complicated process, that can still be automated. On the right-hand side, you can also see ad hoc notifications can cost quite a lot. So, proactively going out and telling people that their trip has been disrupted and getting them to consider certain things, that has always been a very big cost for airlines, but it's going to get a lot worse as we go forward. There are going to be a lot of different things your customers are going to need to do now. Before we just had to worry about passports and visas and that kind of thing, but there are, as Alex said, they're going to be health certificate declaration, testing, antibody testing, all of that kind of thing. And you don't want to be doing any of that manually. You're going to have to do some of it at the airport, but if you wait until the airport to check all of these things, it's going to cause a lot of problems. It's already a total pain when someone turns up and it turns out their passport's out of date, or they don't have the right visa for the trip. The fines that most airlines pay, when someone turns up at the other end of the wrong docks are, already a huge cost that probably equals that bus slide. But that kind of thing is going to get more complicated, particularly with social distancing. Can't have very long queues where people are getting rejected at the front of that queue, because that is going to be a very, very difficult process to handle and just make that whole thing much slower. So what we've been talking to a few different people about is doing things like document checks well in advance. We've been talking to Amadeus and their doc check. We've been talking to other providers like ICTS and Thematic at IATA. Also other things like chatbots that we can connect to from OpenJaw with their T-Social product and that kind of thing. Realistically, we need to be automating notifications that either tell someone their flight's changed well in advance and getting their response, or telling them what documentation they need, or getting those documents checked, or informing them, what protection they need to wear, all of that kind of thing. And ideally, you want that customer to feed back on that, but do it, days, weeks, even months in advance of their trip, so that you're not having to do all of that from fresh when you actually get to the airport. There's another side to this which isn't just financial. If we go on to the next slide, there's also the reputational damage, and this sometimes is a sort of hidden cost. So when a customer feels like they haven't been informed, it's something like 75% of people who are uninformed about the trip. This is on a normal day. This isn't in the new reality of COVID. This was just delays and gate changes and things like that. About 75% of those people are going to be upset. About 17% of those people are going to share that on Facebook. All these stats are just Facebook, mind. Obviously, they're probably on Instagram and whatever else there is out there. You'll have to bear with me. I'm 43, so I mostly Facebook with me. But presumably there's a TikTok dance out there, someone looking angry as well. Out of those 17%, most people have about 155 friends on Facebook. 9% of those probably going to see that post. 40% of those are going to be swayed by word of mouth, which means you're looking at about 655,000 potential new customers who are going to be talked into not using you because that first person, those first people didn't get told what was going on. If you times that by the sort of IATA's the IATA sort of global average on profit, I don't know what that it will be for this year, but that was last year. You're looking at a massive. The really sort of critical thing about all of this is you'll probably never know that any of this has happened. You aren't necessarily going to know that that person was angry because if they're on their own Facebook page ranting about it, you might never find out. I mean, you might have sophisticated social media tracking going on, but there's a real chance that this whole process and those 655,000 potential customers, all of this has happened without any of your knowledge. All you know that is it's increasingly hard to get repeat business, and all of it was down to just people not being informed about what's going on. As I said with Amazon earlier in the webinar, it turned a bad experience into a good one, and we're seeing that happen out there. Everybody knows this isn't the airline's fault. With clear communication and being given the right options and, the empathy, running through those processes, then you can avoid this. But, this is some pretty basic stuff here. And like I said, I know it's difficult to, sometimes to get, finance departments to invest in this type of, sort of initiative, but the cost is, is really big there, and it's very easy to recoup, to lower that figure, for an incredibly, much less, sort of budget. So it's important to understand these figures when you're talking to your finance departments. You say, look, we're losing this money already. We can recoup it. We can stop this happening. This is how we're going to do it. So not everyone's getting this wrong. It's always important to point out. Some people are doing really well. So Alex, you've been looking at Spirit Airlines, is that right?
Yes. So we were very delighted to see a blog by a guy called The Points Guy. And he posted a real customer experience on his blog. And we were delighted to see that, of course, because Spirit uses our systems. And this is a good example of what you can do with your notifications in order to have that engagement with those customers and create less anxiety and give them the opportunity to rebook their flights, ask for a refund, etc. in an easy way rather than having them trying to call and come through multiple times. So from a process perspective, Spirit Airlines sent a notification to the passenger for the qualifying PNRs, and they are providing a link to manage my booking for that customer to self-serve their needs. So from a notification perspective, we are enabling the airline customer to send notifications to the channel that is available for that passenger. So if we identify that this is an SMS or a WhatsApp or other means like email, for example, then we provide those notifications through those different channels. So this gives the opportunity to the passenger to then continue to apply for a full refund or a reservation credit, and they receive a same-day confirmation and refunds where applicable on this. So this has definitely given Spirit a fantastic result. So when we saw this, we're like, yes, this is the way to do it, and we are delighted that they are engaging in such a way. And this is a prime example of what you can do in a simple way without huge cost to delight those customers and get them to come back to you. So, touching those different channels and enabling the customer to then chat to you through those channels is a very straightforward and wonderfully easy process to achieve, which will last you forever.
Because actually, the points guy he's a bit like Lucky. He's one of those industry voices, isn't he? I think it's fair to say that he's probably not banging on about how great Spirit Airlines are all of the time. Spirit.
No. Yes.
And I think this is a really important point here as well. Spirit are a great airline, but they probably have come at this from what is the least amount of money, because they are a super low cost airline. They've come at this from what is going to give us the minimum financial impact. What is the best way of doing that? And this whole process has left that the points guy he's like the food critic of the airline world. He's come out of this going, actually, do you know what? These guys have nailed it. This is brilliant. And Spirit have spent the least possible on this entire nightmare. So that's quite a powerful thing. It just goes to show, you can make people happy and you can save money at the same time. You just got to make sure that all your processes are slick and automated.
Yes, exactly.
So where do you think you're going to see the great change, Alex? Like, what's the sort of the big headline ticket from where you sit?
Well, this is this is going to be very exciting and very painful at the same time if we don't get it right. So we have seen multiple communications coming through, all the different news channels, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar. And most significantly, one that stood out was running health checks before boarding. But this, again, doesn't mean that it is a practical and sustainable way of preparing to fly for a customer.
Were you telling me the other day did you say that an airline was offering testing, like advanced testing, as an ancillary, so you could get out of quarantine? Is that you that was telling me that?
This was not an airline, actually. This was another way of doing this. For example, Vienna Airport is offering testing upon arrival with the results between 2 to 3 hours, but it's going to cost some 190 euros. Which means someone like me who has family in the UK and in Greece, for example, if I need to see my family and I do not want to go into quarantine, I'll take that test. I'll wait for 2 to 3 hours for the result to come back. And if I'm cleared, then I can step out and continue my life as normal. There is an opportunity there, definitely not, an ancillary opportunity. But the first point was, running health checks as from a standard procedure at check-in, which again, it's going to be costly because your health authority will have to be involved. Plus, there's going to be some kind of co-funding and adherence to this process with customers. So there's going to be a lot of issues there, because I can't see many people wanting to definitely do it, because this was a finger prick, where they take your blood. So it was not a swab like you see today, in the different clinics around the world. So it's a very different approach and quite, and could be quite controversial.
Do you know what? It doesn't matter whether doesn't matter how you do that test. You're going to have to warn customers well in advance about what that process is.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is a consideration when you buy the ticket, let alone when you get to the airport, isn't it? I mean, it needs to be. Please be aware if you go ahead with this booking, you will have to do the following. Are you still okay with it? Because where does that leave you as an airline? If someone gets there and says, "Oh, I'm not sticking me in the arm with that needle," You know, are they due a refund? Are they not due a refund? You know, all of that kind of thing needs to be handled well out of the airport, doesn't it, really?
Also,
I mean, from a boarding point of view.
Exactly. And also the validity of this pre-travel is that, you know, someone like me who lives in Australia, I've got to go on a 2-sector journey, right? So my first sector is to, and then I've got another sector either to Athens or and therefore what happens, what is the risk that I'm taking out of the first flight? Could I have been infected? And does that certificate carry on to my final destination? So there's so much complexity with this that I don't think it will work. But it is,
because multi-leg flights, if you've got to get quarantined, because you regularly come to see us in the UK and then go on to Athens.
Yes.
If you have to get quarantined for 14 days here and then 14 days when you get to the other side, it doesn't leave you a lot of time, does it?
Exactly. Imagine our boss, right? It's like, how long away? It's going to be forget it. No, you're not going anywhere. So this is where
business travel is over, isn't it, for a minute?
Yes,
that's the case.
Exactly. And these are things that obviously are being done because our industry bodies at that point in time were not ready and communicating what the protocol should be. So right now we're definitely seeing social distancing protocols coming through slowly within the airports and boarding. So this is going to be one of the most challenging ones, because if you look at right now, not many people are going to travel immediately. They're going to go slow because of that anxiety and certain fear. But can you hear me?
Yep, you're still there.
Sorry. So basically, as we grow the traffic coming through, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how airports will manage those social distancing protocols. You only need to fly through, a busy airport like Heathrow to see that it is like packed like Christmas in a shopping mall, right? So this is where it's going to be very hard to adhere to that. We're seeing, which is not on this list, is face masks. So all of a sudden we are seeing IATA advocating for face masks to be worn by both the cabin crew and passengers on board the aircraft. So this is something that we will see coming through, and we will see it as an important part of the passenger journey. So how are airlines going to communicate that process when the customer needs to wear that mask upon entering the airport, for example? Throughout the journey, are these masks good enough to be used? I'm sorry, but I can hear a buzzing in the background.
Yeah, it's not on my side.
Still hear me? Okay.
So it's gone now.
Okay. Yeah. Good. So there is that aspect of, having to communicate to the customer what is the right type of mask, for example, throughout their journey. I'm seeing things coming out of Europe where, health authorities are advising people not to wear a specific type of mask because, the filter only lasts 4 hours, for example, things like that. And what is the best way of doing it? And I recently saw a study that's come out with regards to wearing masks and how it does prevent, when someone is sneezing or coughing, and those particles to fly far, far away. So I think we do need to base.
It's going to change. I think is the thing, isn't it? I think we have to accept the advice is just going to keep altering over time. I mean, the way I see this is, I can see airlines getting to the point where there is almost a daily update, going out to someone who's going to fly. If you're flying in the next couple of weeks or maybe even longer, there needs to be a regular update of, this is, are the things that we're considering and that you need to consider. This is when we think we'll get a firm this is what might alter that decision. It doesn't matter how often, I think, at this stage we go out to customers and tell them what's happening. It's just that communication needs to be solid, because I think as a passenger, I don't expect everyone to have all the answers now. I just want to feel safe that they're including me in the conversation, and that I'm going to get informed when those decisions are made, because, in reality, it's everyone's best guess at the moment, let's face it. Do you know what I mean? So,
yes, Yes, exactly. So I think this is where we're seeing IATA coming through with that more definitive list of protocols. And the next one is cleaning. Of course, we saw Delta Airlines come through with the Delta Clean initiative, which swept through all the news channels, because obviously they are showing a commitment to the process and totally changing the way that we are perceiving aircraft turnaround time. So this is going to affect industry all the way through, but cleaning of the aircraft is very important. So I saw the importance of this when I was, for example, when I came to Australasia, and I saw how clean the cabins over here are compared to European country airlines. And I was astounded how beautiful it was. Even with very old aircraft, flying on old aircraft in any of the classes. So this is something that people are going to be more owning into and scrutinizing. So airlines have to take this on board and make sure that, it's not just enough to say it, but they will do it, because customers like myself will look in that gap between the seat and the aircraft wall to see if there are crumbs in there, for example.
I've travelled with you before. I know your cleaning protocols have always been
exactly. And that brings us to the food packaging and delivery, and basically this is an opportunity for airlines to differentiate on boards and not make the process bad. So there are opportunities here to go more ecologically friendly, for example, and not stop the food delivery. I've seen feedback from webinars where customers were asked, or participants were asked, whether they would want, they wouldn't mind food going away, and nobody said, I do not want food on board. Especially myself, when I'm flying, for 24 hours, I want to have that service. I want to have that essential part of the experience, of the travel experience. So it is very important. So it's a very interesting point to see how our airline customers are going to manage it, and also how they're going to communicate it to their passengers and as we move forward with bookings.
It's very much sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs at the moment, isn't it? It's am I going to be safe? And then, are you going to feed me? And then, am I going to enjoy any of this? Like, is there, if we assume with quarantines and stuff, business travel's probably on hold for a minute, from a tourist point of view, there's just going to be no point in going if you're going to hate it, the whole thing. I don't think people are going to sacrifice long periods of time and a really unpleasant experience on the plane and the airport if they're just to sit on a beach for 2 weeks. It's one of those things. People are quite averse to that kind of thing. There's going to be a lot of reassurance that needs to go out in that messaging to say, this is the process, and this is how we're going to do it. Exactly. So I was just going to. On that note, I was just going to say about, how can people stand out from the crowd? I know what we've talked about might sound really complicated, but actually we've been doing this kind of thing for a while. We've always known that experience is kind of key to everything, particularly the sort of younger generations. They're very experiential. They're looking. Everyone's going to be looking now at the value. I think particularly as there's a real chance prices are going to go up, they're going to look at the value of that price. Are they getting a great experience for the money they give? And a lot of that is going to be down to personalization. I think personalization and contextualization is very critical because every passenger is different, every booking is different, every route is different, but even more so now because those routes are quite likely to actually be different. Each country, as much as I know IATA did a lot of work trying to bring everyone together and make a standardized set, but the reality is, the situation in each country isn't going to be the same. So it's going to be a case of, I would imagine, a sort of, an order of scale of how severe those controls are. And then it will depend on the country sort of, how severe that is, because the worst case fits all for everywhere, because if you've got a region that's come out the other side of this, they're not going to be treated the same as a region that's just going into it. So personalization and contextualization are going to be very critical. In reality, we've been doing that for a really long time. So everyone knows about personalized third-party ancillary offers, and this is going to be a very similar thing. I mean, I'm not suggesting that people are going to, get charged for this, or that it's an ancillary bolt-on to, get masks or PPE or, have tests done. Although some of it, invariably, some people will find a way of monetizing it. But that approach of when you're pulling together a notification that goes out to a customer a month before or a week before, a day before, that kind of thing, of calling out and saying, what type of car does this family need on this holiday on these dates, based on everything we know about that customer and where they're going. What type of hotels do they need? What in-destination stuff are they going to need? That mechanism is going to be pretty much the same thing. As I said, we've been talking to Amadeus, ICTS, and Thematic, and people like that about, how can we call their API, come back to the customer and say, on your route, this is what we need, what you're going to need. You're going to need this certificate, this visa, these are your passport stuff. Please submit these declarations in the following places. We put that back in the booking. The customer knows what they need. They know it's been checked. And they have got confidence when they get to the airport. Also, the airline then and the airport aren't having to deal with a bunch of mismatched, customers who saw on the news that there was a set of requirements in another country and they've got confused with what they actually need for their trip. This kind of thing is happening all the time. And if we can get the same sort of success by wiring that up as we have done previously with ancillary offers, then we should be in a good place. So, Alex, would you like to just sort of give us a summary of what things we talked about today? Because I appreciate we've covered all sorts of things, but I'm also conscious of time. We don't want to ramble on all day. If anyone's got any questions, please do put them in the question box, and we'll answer those in a second.
So obviously, passenger expectations will define what we do next. So we should be ready to meet their demands and to be proactively ready to delight them actually out of all of this. So this is a good opportunity to re-engage with those future customers of ours. So it is very important to do this and keep communicating. So everything we do from here on is about that confidence and taking away that anxiety and fear that exists at the moment. So that communication is very, very important on what you need to do next. So it is important for you to engage. So tell your passengers what you're doing about it. Whether you are an airline or a travel agent or any other part of the travel industry, it is good to communicate. You do have, some future bookings there. You do have some form of database. It is good to tell those customers what you're doing. So it's important for you to keep on doing it. And engage with them, in the sense of what you're seeing out there, what is happening and how you're trying to help them, complete a beautiful journey in the future. So it's not about price. So they are looking for that experience. And as Al said, it is very important to create, new experiences. So let's try to bring that joy back into travel and take away those bad feelings and bad experiences from a mental perspective that we've seen so far. And again, the cost of getting it wrong is significant. Customers are going to remember you, and they're going to remember what you did, how you communicated to them during this crisis. Now they have time to read your emails more than ever. A lot of them are at home, and a lot of them are, pondering what's going to happen to them next and how they're going to, to kind of get out and travel and do things and when that's going to happen. So it's very important to do this.
Excellent. So, if anyone is interested, we are kind of constantly putting out information on COVID and advice for airlines and that kind of thing. Sorry, I've gone too far. Yes. Oh, here we go. So, yeah, we have we've put all sorts of content out there. We put content out every couple of days on the hub. There's always good things going on there. We've got a guide to the cost of silence, which it just talks about how you should keep communicating with your customers even in downtime. There's all sorts of other great content on our hub if you follow the link on our website. And on there, it's got opinion pieces from various industry experts. Nicholas Key, our CEO, did a great summary yesterday that went out on LinkedIn. That'll be linked through from there as well. And there'll be more of these as well. If anyone is interested in talking to us, if anyone wants to find out how they can sort any of this out, or you just want to talk about it and get some advice and see how everyone else is doing it, please do get in touch with us. As a response to COVID, we have sort of packaged up our very basic sort of version of our system, which will plug into your reservation system, at least if you're on the big three, and allow you to communicate with all of your customers with just one person spending, a couple of minutes on it. So we've got a sort of an entry level quick setup that we can do for you if you are interested. But as I say, if you've got an opinion and you want to send it to us, or you've got any questions, please do get in touch. And hopefully we'll get to talk to you soon. So thanks very much for everyone who's joined us today. Thank you very much, Alex, for your time as well.
Thank you.
And
it was great to be here.
And thanks, Nat, for organising all of this. So hopefully we'll speak to you all soon. Good luck with all of this, everyone. I'm sure this will pass at some point, but we've just got to stay in touch with each other and stay in touch with the customers in the meantime. But that's it from us. So thanks very much.